Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today I'll be sharing a few tips to help you become a better sniper. As most of you know, snipers are extremely powerful in Hyperscape and a well-placed shot can easily tip the balance of a gunfight. Therefore, knowing how to use one effectively is vital in getting the upper hand for you and your teammates. So I'm going to start off by covering the core sniping mechanics first and then dive into how you should apply those mechanics in game. So stick around to the end and perhaps you may gain a few valuable tips. Also, if you happen to find this guide helpful, then leave a like and subscribe for more of the same content. Now then, let's get started. The first thing you need to know is that snipers in Hyperscape are hit scan. Unlike projectiles, there's no travel time and bullets land almost instantly from the moment you press the trigger. So there's no bullet drop off or travel speed to account for, which means you don't need to lead your shots in front or above a target. To put it simple, your bullets go exactly where you aim and ultimately makes sniping more accessible. This fundamentally shifts the skill required to snipe and puts more emphasis on timing, but more on that later. The second most important thing you need to know are the damage values. The protocol's damage increases with every fusion, and this can make it hard to identify when the protocol is potent enough. To keep it simple, a fully fused sniper can one-shot when you land a headshot, and the range at which you can one-shot from is infinite. So you can potentially be outside of rendering distance and still be a threat to your enemies. However, fusions below max level aren't capable of one-shotting and will require 2 or more hits to finish off an enemy. For example, the base protocol up to level 1 will need to land 3 body shots to eliminate a full HP target. Therefore, you should always try and fuse your protocol at least twice before engaging, or you'll be making things considerably harder for yourself. The good thing is though, there aren't any limb multipliers, so if you hit the arms, hands, legs or feet, you're still going to deal the same amount of damage as an upper chest shot would. So you don't really have to prioritize certain body parts and be pinpoint accurate all the time. Just focus on hitting the largest part, which is around the torso, unless you've got a fully fused protocol or if your opponents are low enough to benefit from the 1.5 times multiplier. I won't be diving into the multipliers, but I may edit the stats into this video if you're interested. Another important thing you need to consider when sniping is your loadout. Without the right loadout, you can massively hinder your effectiveness and leave a huge weakness for your enemies to exploit. The protocol has 3 rounds in a magazine, and that's just not going to be enough to keep multiple enemies at bay, and the magazine size doesn't increase when you fuse it either. So you should always pair a sniper with a medium to short range weapon, because you're going to find yourself engaging in medium to close range fights for the majority of the game. No matter how passively you play, you won't be able to avoid close quarter fights, especially when the playable area shrinks during the later stages of the game. So having a Harpy or a Mammoth as your secondary is essential in fending off aggressive players. The Ripper and the Hexfire are great choices too, but I prefer to pair my sniper with a Riot 1. The reason is the hefty damage output of the Riot 1 makes for devastating follow-up shots, and I'm sure you've seen a few examples in the background by now. Just remember to never pair protocol with an explosive weapon or the Dragonfly. Now that's out of the way, let's get into some of the sniping techniques. The first thing I like to cover is crosshair placement. Having your crosshair placed over the target before scoping in will make it easier for you to land your shots once you decide to engage. In general, the less you have to move your crosshair when you ADS, the quicker and faster you'll land the shot. This also reduces the time you're scoped in, leaving you less open to attack because you're normally a sitting duck when ADSing. So you should minimize the amount of time you're hard scoping, especially when your crosshair is miles off target. The only exceptions would be if you're predicting the player to move into your crosshairs or if you're just long range sniping from a safe distance. So ideally you would want to get your enemy in the center of your screen and make micro adjustments once you've scoped in. And this nicely leads me into my next tip. Naturally, players rely on their right analog stick to make all adjustments, but that's not always the most optimal way to make micro adjustments. The left analog stick is actually much better at making minute horizontal adjustments and should be used to correct your aim when appropriate. For instance, if you're a millimeter off target when sniping from a distance, using the left stick to adjust your aim is much easier. Of course, if the target is closer and the adjustment needed is greater than a millimeter, then default to the right stick as always, especially when you need to make vertical adjustments. Also keep in mind the aim assist is arguably stronger on the left stick, and you can use this resistance to time your shots, which leads me on to my next tip, which is timing. Your accuracy will mostly depend on how well you can time your shots and not so much on raw aim skill. I alluded to this earlier on because of how sniping works. Hit scan weapons just don't require a combination of multiple skills in order to use one effectively. For example, you don't need to hold your breath, and movement doesn't affect your accuracy, so as long as you time your shots perfectly, you can dominate with a sniper. To improve your timing, you should be timing your shots when you feel the resistance in your sticks. This resistance you feel is aim assist slowing down your sensitivity when your crosshair is over a target. Resistance basically indicates that you're on target, and learning to pull the trigger when you feel the resistance will vastly improve your hit rate. Of course, this is easier said than done, but with practice you will be able to build muscle memory over time. Just use the practice range and get used to the feeling of resistance. Another aspect of timing is knowing when to engage. If you tend to play solos, then you should always take your time with your first shot, since you have the element of surprise. You should either wait for the enemies to be stationary or either moving in a more predictable manner. The perfect time to take a shot really depends on the circumstances, but is usually when a player is reviving, looting and jumping because of the long hang time. Just keep in mind enemies can change directions by double jumping, so it's best to strike after the second jump. This also nicely ties into target prioritization. Knowing who to hit first and who to avoid is key to being a successful sniper. Whenever there are multiple targets in front of you, you should always identify the most vulnerable player first. Your decisions can be based on HP, movement and range. For example, the closer they are, the bigger the threat they are. The lower the HP, the quicker the fight ends, and the less they move, the easier they are to hit. Also, it's vital that you scope out after each shot so that you can see who's in your peripheral view and allows you to make better decisions. So that's about all I've got for you guys today. I hope you've learned a thing or two, and if you have any tips of your own, share them in the comments down below. As always, leave a like if this was helpful, a dislike if it wasn't, and subscribe for more of the same content. Take care.